Well, as we're closing out our series of Haunted by Regret, I suffer from something that some of you might have the same ailment, the same problem, but it's called FOMO. It's a fear of missing out. And so this can lead to some regret because, it's like, well, I should have gone to that because if I would have gone, I would have experienced it. It would have been amazing. It would have been great. And so then you're constantly like, oh man, what should I do? I've got to go. I've got to be a part of that. And so, part of that, I kind of went down, we have like two different types of regret that we're going to talk about today. But the first, when I was probably 9 or 10, my grandparents took me and my brother, they had a motorhome. They took us all the way up to Alaska one summer. We spent like 6 weeks driving from here, stopping in North Dakota, South Dakota. We got to see Mount Rushmore. We went to General Custer State Park, got to see buffalo, all these crazy things to this time in my life, I still haven't got to experience those things again. But we go to a place in Alberta, Canada called Lake Louise. And I don't know if you've ever seen this place, but it is probably the most beautiful, picturesque lake you could ever imagine. It's like this perfectly clear, aqua blue, just pristine lake that reflects the mountains off of it. I mean, it was just even at that young age, I just remember like, wow, this is amazing. And so we walk up, and there's this guy, they're playing these big horns, and he's like, oh, well, my brother's up in the mountain, and I'm going to play it, and then he's going to play it back, and it just echoes back. And there's this trail that walks around, that goes all the way around the lake. And as we begin to walk out on this trail, there's these little chipmunks that start running up all around, so we stop and we feed them little snacks. They'll run down your arm and eat out of your hand. And I just remember I was like a 9, 10-year-old. This was like the coolest thing ever. And so there's a destination at the end of this trail that we're going to. And so we walk about 20 miles. I mean, it's probably like 200 feet, but, for a 9-year-old, it felt like 200 miles. And I was just exhausted. Just couldn't do anymore. I wanted to play the chipmunks. And so finally, I either talk or my grandma, depending on my memory of the day, my grandma's like, okay, me and Jeremy are going to go back to the motorhome so y'all can carry on. And we go back. And finally, my grandpa and my brother get back. And they start talking about how amazing it was at the end of the trail. And like they saw a glacier, and it was, this is summer, so it falls off. And just crazy sights. And I remember from that point, I was like, man, like I wish I would have just kept walking. Like I got tired. I didn't want to. I was young. And so I quit walking. So I have regret. Like maybe I'll get a chance to go back to this place again in my life. Maybe not. We'll see. But I won't. If I don't, I'm not going to get to see that experience again. So then another time, Larissa and I, we go to Costa Rica for our anniversary. And we go to Tamarindo, and if you've never been, it's a beautiful place, but Tamarindo is like one street with restaurants and stuff. Then outside of that, it's like dirt roads, like very rural. So for my personality, my adventurous personality, this was perfect. And so they had amazing food. Well, then on this food, on the street, they have vendors selling food. And so I see this guy, a couple days in a row, and he's cooking these like chicken and pork kebabs, probably out of a trash can on the side of the road. I'm like, I have to try that. And Larissa's like, no, you don't. I'm like, no, I do. And so finally, I get to try it. And it was everything I expected. It was amazing. So I'm like, I have to do that again before we leave, right? So our last day, we go visit some other areas, and it's like 2, 3 o'clock, prime snack time. We'll go get a snack, go back to the hotel, rest for a little bit, go eat dinner again. I mean, it's perfect. So we're pulling into town, and it starts raining. And as we pull up to where this guy is, he's cleaning everything up. I could have gone another day and got another kebab, but I didn't. So I have regrets. I've got to go back just for that. Nothing else, just for that. And so life is going to be, so there's these kind of regrets. But then there's also, there's times where maybe you're like, you know what, I need to try the guy cooking out of a trash can. And then your wife's like, no, you don't. And you do it. And then you're like, I have different regrets, right? Those are the different kind of regrets. And life is going to be filled with all kinds of moments of regret and situations that can lead us to regret. But the problem is whenever we are haunted by regret. And so a life that is haunted by regret can look like a few different things. But maybe you're always looking back at your past decisions. If I would have done A, B, and C, then I'll be a millionaire right now. Or if I would have done this, then my life would look so much different. And you're constantly looking in reverse. And you're not looking forward. Or you've done something that you feel is unforgivable. You feel like you've done something that has completely changed the course of your life. And now you're sitting here looking back, and you know, that moment when I did that, that was the beginning of the end of my life. You let regret take you to depression, thinking that you are the mistake instead of the thing you did is a mistake. And I just want to tell you, that's so far from the truth. And so as we talk about these things, I want to cover two types of regrets. The first is, I wish I would have done something. And the second is, I wish I wouldn't have done something. So I want to ask you, is regret a bad thing? It is a negative emotion, but is it bad? See, negative emotions are things like frustration, sadness, anger, hurt, rejection. All these things are emotions that come up in situations that affect us negatively. Now, I try to avoid these at all costs. I just push these feelings down to a deep, dark place, and they eventually are unleashed on some unexpected, undeserving person, like maybe my kids or a waiter that said something wrong. I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding. Relax. I know I'm not the only one here. I've been at some dinners with different people. We'll leave them nameless, and I'm like, let's come on, guys. Let's give them a break. But negative emotions are not bad things. They're emotions that are telling us something isn't right. The way that we feel, the way that we have, something is wrong. And so sometimes those emotions can mislead us, though. See, it doesn't change the fact that you feel that. It doesn't change the fact that you feel regret, that you feel rejected. But we have to learn to deal with it properly. And so some of y'all might have experienced this. Maybe you've seen a friend, your best friend, or somebody hanging out with a group of people that you know. And you're like, well, they didn't invite me. I'm here all alone at home. And they're out having the time of their life. They didn't invite me. And what do you feel? You feel rejected, right? Is your feeling valid? Absolutely. It's like whenever you get left out, especially if you have FOMO like me, it's like you feel sad. So your feeling is valid. But is it true? Do you know the circumstance around that event? Maybe your best friend wasn't the one that put it on. Maybe they were invited to something by some other person that just happens to know people. So you feeling rejected is valid, but you letting it take you to this dark place of thoughts and letting your mind spiral out of control is not dealing with that emotion properly. So again, is regret a bad thing? No, it's not. But regret should lead you to action. Regret should be your teacher. We have a family value that says we look back to grow, not to dwell. So as these things that happen that lead us to look back and maybe regret things or regret decisions in our lives, if we dwell on them, it can take us to a negative place. But we've got to look at those. What decision did we make that led us to there, and what can we do differently looking forward? Does that make sense? So again today, we're going to talk about two kinds of regret. What you should have done, what you shouldn't have done. And it's going to be interchangeable as you go through, just however it relates to you, because we all shoulda, coulda, woulda done something differently, right? And so this is a quote by Les Brown. It's been quoted a lot in church. But if we really take this to heart, it can be a powerful motivator. But it says, the graveyard is the richest place on earth because it is here that you will find all the hopes and dreams that never were fulfilled, the books that were never written, the songs that were never sung, the inventions that were never shared, the cures that were never discovered, all because someone was too afraid to take that first step, keep with the problem, or determined to carry out their dream. So, what this statement is saying is there's individuals that have a cure to a problem on this earth that are not letting it out of themselves because for whatever reason. So this type of regret, reflecting on what you should have done, is probably more common in the older generations, the older we get, because we see that time start to tick, right? I remember a long time ago, there was somebody that was retiring, and they were 60, 65, and they started counting down like, well, you really only have about 10 more good years of life, because by the time I'm 75, I'm gonna start being really elderly, and they start like just talking themselves all the way to their death. I'm like, that is depressing. Like, come on, man. They're like, no, you got life to live. So this happens though, and I can experience this in my own life, even at 37 years old. I look back to decisions in my early 20s and like, man, if I would have done things differently, where would I be now? And so this is very common. And I love being an American. This is truly the greatest country you can live in. And I believe that in America, more than anywhere else, you can truly do whatever you set your mind to. You can accomplish and be whoever you want to be. And I feel like that's even more so prevalent now, even than like 15, 20 years ago. I mean, you have kids like becoming millionaires on YouTube with toys. Like that wasn't possible 20 years ago. And if you followed this and it's worked out for you, man, I'm happy for you. I'm glad. But this has always felt just a little empty to me. The thought and the idea of working a job, getting to this point, and then just retiring, it just didn't do it for me. And those of you who maybe you're like, wait, what's the American dream? I just remember it's like, as a kid, it was like, well, you got to graduate high school, go to college, get a good job, find a wife, have your 2.5, your 2.5 kids with your white picket fence, and then you retire, and then you can do whatever you want, and then you die. At least that's my interpretation. And there's lots of people that do that, and I feel like we were starting to see some of that generation that's worked those 30, 40 years following this. And I just had a conversation this week with someone who worked 40 years in the refineries, and he's starting to have some health complications. And I hadn't seen him, and I was like, man, like where you been? He said, oh man, I've been having some heart tests done. And he said, I told my wife the other day, if it wasn't for her and the kids, I would have left that plant on day 2. This guy's spent 40 years of his life doing something that he hated every day. He has a beautiful house, nice cars. He told me when I first met him, man, I've got enough money from retirement to last the rest of my life, do whatever I want. You think he's looking back on his life, thinking about what he should have done, what he could have done? All for the sake of his wife and kids, who might not even ask for some of the things that he was trying to give them. This makes me sad. But let me ask you, even at his age, does he still have more to give? You think he has something to offer to me, to us, to other people in life? Absolutely. But you know what he does every day? Nothing. Waters his grass, waters his flowers. That's it. I want to tell you, you are so much more. It doesn't matter how young you are, how old you are, what stage of life you're in. You are so much more. And you have a purpose that is so much more than punching a clock and trading your time for money. So for those of you who are waiting for retirement, I've got a little bad news for you. I didn't like this the first time I heard it either. But I've read the Bible. There's actually no retirement in the Bible. We don't get to hang it up. Larry's disappointed. We don't get to hang it up and just shut it down for the rest of our lives. Now, there's seasons of lives. You know, you have a time frame of production, you have a time frame of producing and doing things, but then your season is going to begin to shift, and you got to recognize what season you're in. And so, if you're waiting just to shut it down for the rest of your life, I'm talking to you, because I don't want you to get to the full end and look back and say, man, I could have done so much more with what I have. I've got so much more left to give. I've got books in me. I've got songs in me. Don't look back on your life and regret. And so in John 17:4, Jesus is saying this before he died on the cross. He's praying and he says, I brought glory to you here on earth by completing the work you gave me to do. So Jesus is telling God before he died, hey, I did what you sent me here to do. I've completed my work. Can you pray this prayer right now where you are in life? I know I can't. Can you say that you've completed the work that you feel like God has put inside of you? There's some people in the room that haven't even started the work that God put inside of you. And understand, I'm not trying to shame you, to guilt you, or anything like that. I want to spur you to action. I want you to be inspired to say, you know what? Life begins now. Because I promise you're going to reach more fulfillment, more joy, more happiness in doing what God has called you to do than just living out a life for your own joys and your own satisfaction. You have a purpose in your life that only you can fulfill. There's a book inside of you that only you have that story to tell. There's encouragement inside of you that only comes from your perspective, your life experience. Only you can fulfill that purpose. So please don't get haunted, don't get in the end and be haunted by regret in your life because you failed to take action. So whenever Larissa and I first got married, I have to start the story out like this because we played pranks on each other. She made me say that, make sure y'all understood that we play pranks on each other. So one of the pranks that we played on each other was, I would come home from work and I'd, taking a shower, get cleaned up, and that was my part of the prank. And she would come in with ice cold water and dump it over the top of the shower, all down my back. It was funny. We loved it. And so finally it gets to a point, and I'm like, you know what? I have to get her back, right? And so I get done with the shower, get out, and I go get a cup of water. This is still under debate over what was actually in the cup. It was water. I'm here talking, so it was water. And so I begin to chase her around the house, and we have a galley kitchen. I end up getting her cornered in the kitchen. Now, I don't know if you've ever been playing a game or whatever, maybe it's hunting, but it's like whenever you get a person to where now they're defenseless and just captured, some of the fun is kind of sucked out of the game, right? It's like, oh man, like I won, but like I didn't finish the job, so. But I'm standing there, I'm like, what do I do though? I mean, I can't back down, right? I can't walk away from this moment. It's not my fault she ran into a corner. And so I did what I had to do, guys. I took that glass of water and just threw it in her. I had immediate regret. Immediate regret. Even though she deserved it, I had regret. But this is the second type of regret we're going to talk about is I shouldn't have done that. I should not have done that. So we're going to turn to Matthew 26:31. This is a story of Peter before he denies Jesus. And, they're with Jesus, and Jesus is telling them, said, before he gets arrested, he said, "This very night you will fall away on the account of me. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered." "But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you in Galilee." Peter replied, "Even if all of you fall away on my account, fall away, I need some hooked on phonics, guys. Peter replied, "Even if all fall away on account of you, I never truly will. Truly I tell you," Jesus answered, "this very night, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. But Peter declared, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you." And all the other disciples said the same. So Jesus is telling them this is going to happen, and Peter's like, "No, it's not. It's not, Jesus. I'm with you." He's like, "Actually, tonight, you're going to do it 3 times. Like before the end of tonight, 3 times. It's like, "No, definitely not, Jesus." So after this, Jesus is arrested. He's taken to Caiaphas' house, and Peter follows Jesus. And what does Peter do? Exactly what Jesus told him he would do. And it's kind of funny to me, looking back on it. We have the ability to look back and see the whole story. So I'm like, come on, Peter. Like, Jesus told you what you were going to do. And you're like, no, I'm not. And he's like, "No, actually 3 times a night. You do it." And like, why wouldn't you just like go home? Like, I'm actually not going to talk to anybody else the rest of the night. I'm not even going to give this a chance. But he follows Jesus. But honestly, like, I'm lying to you. I would be like Peter too, because I would want to prove Jesus wrong. I would want to kind of do it in his face too, like, "Jesus, you're over there, I'm over here. I didn't tell anything to anybody. So gotcha." But how many times have we done the exact same thing in our life? We had all the warnings. We had leaders, people in our lives telling us what we should or shouldn't do, but we knew better, right? We could have taken guard, could have done something differently, but no, we put ourselves in situations where we end up failing. So here a week ago, I was at Johnny Tamales, and I was doing a little lunch gathering with some people. And I was at my house before that, and I left kind of early, and I grabbed my backpack, had my laptop, had some books in it. So I was like, I'm going to be there early. I'm going to spend a little time reading. And I was like, no, like, just leave it at home. Like, in reality, no, you're not. And so I was like, no, I'm going to. So I took it. Get to the restaurant. I started listening to a podcast on the way there and finish it. And sitting in the parking lot, and I go to walk in. And again, I was like, man, you should take your backpack inside. I was like, no, like, I'll probably leave it after we're done, because I'll just get distracted, and I'm on the next thing. And so I don't want to do that. So, like, I'll leave it here. Done it countless times. And we're in the middle of this, and the waitress comes in and says, hey, you have a white Malibu? Yeah? Well, your window's broke. And I'm sitting there like, okay, I'll park by the highway, maybe like a rock flung, hit the window, somebody bumped it. And I go out and the passenger window's busted immediately. I was like, dang it. So what that was the Holy Spirit giving me a little like, hey, warning, take your backpack inside, leave it at home. But I didn't listen to that still small voice. And in the moment, it didn't feel like the Holy, I didn't have the goosebumps. It didn't feel like the Holy Spirit, but that's what it was saying, hey, just a warning, this is going to happen. So I had regrets. I had regrets that I didn't listen to that voice. Or maybe, there's people that have struggled with pornography in the room. People tell you to, hey, put up guards, put up blocks, be careful what you watch, be careful what you listen to, all these things. No, I got it. I got it under control. I'm good. And then, what happens? You fall, you end up having to look your spouse in the face. You have regrets. Or finances. People that help you with your finances, they'll help you get a budget. You don't need to buy that car. You need an emergency fund. You make poor financial decisions, and then we're praying, Lord, I need a miracle. No, you need a budget. But you have regrets over the choices you made in your finances, whenever wisdom and direction can help alleviate all those problems. And Jesus is like, I can't really help you. I'm not going to give you more if you can't even take care of what you already have. Youth, young adults, my kids, your dumb parents that don't know anything, listen to them. Because they're wise, they're smart, right, Riley? And we've made some poor choices in our life, and we're trying to help keep you from regret. So how many times have we been just like Peter? We've ignored all warnings, ignored everything around us, and we end up doing something that leads us to regret. So what happened to Peter after he denied Jesus? So John 26:75 says, suddenly Jesus' words flashed through Peter's mind, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times that you even know me. And he went away weeping bitterly. Do we respond the same way, knowing we messed up? When we regret what we just did? We walk away feeling horribly about what we just did? And where'd that lead you to? Regret for your action? Feel shameful for having to look those people that warned you back in the face? Now you begin to have self-hatred. Man, why are you so stupid just to keep on doing the same thing over and over and over again? Why can't you learn? You begin to resent people. You begin to isolate yourself because you don't want to be around people that remind you of your poor choices, which leads to depression. So where did it take Peter? It took Peter right back to where he was before he met Jesus, and that was fishing. So again, is regret bad? My real answer would say it depends. Because where do you let your regret take you? Because again, regret should be leading you to action. It should be your teacher. Is it leading you to a paralyzation in your life which you'll end up wishing you did so much more with the time that you had? That looking back in your life and say, man, if I were to just walked around Lake Louise, I could have seen all of God's glorious creation. I could see all of the miracles of creation or the miracles that God wanted to do in my life and through my life. But like me, you quit whenever it gets hard, whenever it gets tough. So I didn't want to walk anymore. Is it leading you to isolation, depression, going back to who you used to be before you encountered the love of Jesus? Back to a life that is empty and void of purpose? So I've read the story of Peter denying Jesus, heard it countless times in my life. But I read something new that I've never seen before. And when Jesus tells Peter that he's going to deny him, this is what he says in Luke. In Luke 22, 31 through 32, it says, Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift each of you like wheat. But I have pleaded in prayer for you, Simon, that your faith should not fail. So when you have repented and turned to me again, strengthen your brothers. So Satan is asking and trying to sift out Peter and the other disciples. Jesus knew what was coming and was interceding on their behalf. Satan knew Peter's potential and was going to seize his opportunity to take him out. Satan knows your potential, and he's seizing every opportunity he has to take you out. So Peter denies Jesus and he goes back to fishing. But what really happens here? See, Jesus called Peter out of just existing in life and into who he was created to be. Jesus saw more in Peter than what he was capable of doing and called Peter into who he was capable of being. Did you catch that? Jesus saw more in Peter than what he was capable of doing and called Peter into who he was capable of being. So Jesus told Peter, you are no longer going to be a fisherman, but a fisher of men. Come follow me. So Peter no longer identified as a fisherman, but as a follower of Jesus. So when Peter denied Jesus, he was actually denying who Jesus called him out to be. See, the servant girl didn't say, hey, aren't you that fisherman from Galilee? She said, aren't you one of Jesus' disciples? Aren't you one of his followers? His guilt, his regret, his shame caused him to deny who he really was and let it take him back to who he used to be. He denied his true identity. She didn't say, are you that fisherman that hung out with Jesus? No, you're one of his disciples. You're one of those followers. So where are you letting regret lead you? Again, regret should lead you to action. But what action is that? So the definition of regret is to feel sad, repentant. But let's dig a little deeper. What does it mean to repent? Does it mean to say, I'm sorry? My bad? No, it's to feel or express sincere regret or remorse about one's wrongdoing or sin. So we're going to go one more layer deeper. The Greek word for repent is metanoia. I think y'all have heard this before. The definition of metanoia is repentance, a change of mind, a change of the inner man. So again, in Luke 22, 31 through 32, it says, Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift each of you like wheat. But I have pleaded in prayer for you, Simon, that your faith should not fail. So when you have repented and turned to me again, strengthen your brothers. When you have repented, when you have turned to me again, when you have changed your mind, when you have changed your inner man, come back to me. So Peter left Jesus and went back to fishing, but put yourself in his shoes for a minute. His whole world just collapsed. How many times did he see, were they in kind of sticky situations, and then the Bible says that Jesus just kind of slipped through the crowd? I mean, I'm not even convinced that they really fully understood what Jesus was about to do and coming to do on earth. I think they were still waiting for Jesus to rise into authority on earth and take a kingly position in his flesh. So his whole world just came crashing down on him. I'm sure he had regret thinking like, man, I just wasted the last 3 years of my life. I really thought I bought into I thought I was a part of something that was just going to really change my life. But just like John the Baptist, just like all the other people in the Bible, they're dead again. But Jesus shows up after the resurrection to remind Peter of exactly who he was. In John 21, Peter's out fishing, and Jesus shows up. Again, this is after his resurrection, shows up to restore him. And he asks Peter 3 times, "Do you love me? Then feed my sheep. Do you love me? Then feed my sheep. Do you love me? Then feed my sheep." But actually, the first time, I read the other day, he says, "Do you love fishing more than me? Do you love what you do more than who you are?" And if you feel like it's too late for you, it's not. Because let me remind you who Jesus is. For Lazarus, who was actually, it was too late, he died, Jesus shows up and raises him from the dead. He was able to accomplish so much more in his life because Jesus showed up. He paid for his taxes out of a fish's mouth. He could pull the resources he needed for anything he wanted to do at any point. He fed the 5,000 twice. So if you think it's too late, you missed your big opportunity, it's not too late. It's time to spring into action, to step into your purpose, step into who you are. See, God doesn't work on our timeline, but He's waiting for you to show up. Do you love what you do more than you're called to be? I got to work this overtime. I got to do this. You do? Why? Maybe you really do. Maybe you're doing great things. Or maybe you're trying to avoid something. Do you believe you are called and capable of more? So I'm here to tell you, you are. Do you feel like there's something more to life than just working a job, just existing, just waiting to retire? Because there is. And one of the things I love about CT Church is we have a growth track for you. We can help you figure these things out. You know, one of those steps is Connect Track. This is going to get you started in a process of learning what we're about, who we are, what we do. But then we also have life groups. We have KLA. We've heard some stories already out of the identity. My daughter's learning about her identity at 11 years old because we want her to know who she is. I don't want her to get to a place where she's just really good at doing stuff and successful in life, but doesn't know who she is. I want her to know who she is and work out of that. So please, if you're not in any of these growth tracks, sign up today. Get started. Get in a life group. Because I promise you, these are the first steps to help you find out who you really are. So as we begin to close, I'm here to remind somebody this morning, and preparing for this, I felt this strongly, that the old life that you were living before you encountered Jesus isn't as glamorous as you remember it. Because there's a reason why you walked away from that. There's a reason why you left that life. And so as you're thinking, man, this is just too difficult, it's not, because I promise you, you're going to end up worse where you were before. Satan wants to do everything he can do to pull you away because he believes more in you than you believe in yourself. Satan believes more in what you're capable of doing than you believe that you are capable of doing.